Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of GameBiz Heroes. Today we're unlocking the secrets behind recruitment in the games industry. Discover actionable tips on how to stand out in today's competitive job market and land your dream role in gaming. Please welcome Joe.
Hey, Melanya. Yeah, sure. So, my name is Joe McKernan. I'm the Associate Director of Skillsearch, the gaming recruitment company.
And what first drew you to specialize in recruitment for gaming industry?
Yeah, so there's a common phrase amongst recruiters of people that fall into recruitment. Like it's a funny job that you wouldn't meet many 4 or 5-year-olds that say, when I grow up, I want to be a recruiter, right?
Yes.
Which is a shame, right? Because it's a really fun job, and particularly games is a fun industry to work in. But no, I went to university. It's a kind of a common story as well. I did a totally different degree. I did a law degree originally. Graduated in 2015, so 10 years ago now. Realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. Was a bit lost, and just kind of luckily in Brighton, Skillsearch were an already kind of established gaming recruitment company. And they were looking for someone, raw kind of talent that they could mold and shift, that also, to be really frank, was a bit of a nerd as well, right? I think in gaming, there's a reason I've been here 10 years because I'm really passionate about games and love the industry. So very, very lucky to have someone that, took a bit of a chance on a 21-year-old that just had a degree, that wanted to give it a go. But yeah.
Get ready for something huge. Games Forum London is hitting the city on September 16th and 17th, and you cannot miss it. 2 days packed with sharpest minds, killer strategies, and networking gold. Use my code MelanyaGF for 15% off your tickets. You can find it in the description below. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. And how has your view of the games industry evolved since you started 10 years ago, as I understood, and particularly regarding the talent and the company culture?
Yeah, sure. It's been a roller coaster, right? I think, to say the least, particularly the last couple of years. But from 2015 to 2020, there was this pretty stable, incredible growth that kind of went up, and everyone was happy, right? Everyone was growing and their careers were progressing and so on. And then we had COVID, where I think in games we all got really worried for the first 3 to 6 months, and then everyone went, wow, okay, this shift is really good for our industry, right? And we had the COVID boom years from kind of 2022, and then this is a much larger topic that we don't have time to discuss, right? But the last 2 or 3 years have seen a massive kind of retraction in that, right? So it's really, like I say, a roller coaster. I mean, these things, as with any economy or industry, there are cycles, and these things are cyclical, and I think we're going through a bad time at the moment, and that's not gonna last forever. But there's been tons of changes, right? And there's been, COVID was the big rise of remote working, and then post-COVID, a lot of people have realized that, oh, actually, I'm kind of lonely at home, and I want to be part of a team. And if I'm a junior, I want to be part of the office. And there's that reversion back. So I don't know if I properly answered your question, but in terms of trends in industry, I think the thing it's told me is games is so malleable. We're a technical industry with really smart technical people, and I think in a really fun way, in 2 years' time, it's going to look different to how it looks today.
And I hope things will be looks more positive than right now, because I see that the industry is kind of going to the more stable, positive stage, but still a lot of layoffs and this negative news. So I hope it will change soon, because everyone is also tired about this stuff, right? And what are the biggest challenges that studios are facing right now in attracting and retaining top talent?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's been a big exodus to other industries, and it's something that as a recruiter in games, I always loved finding out people's motivations, and in other industries, the motivation to change a job might just be get me a higher salary, get me a higher salary, get me more remote days, something like that. In games, what I always loved is people said, I love racing games. I would take a pay cut to work for a racing game or something like that. And people were really project driven. We don't live in that right now, and I agree with you, things hopefully will soon get better, but right now, just having a job in games is kind of a win. And what I'm trying to say is a lot of people I know are leaving the game industry for actually better paid jobs, but
Mm,
in industries that are maybe, I don't want to say, boring or dull, it's not quite the same, but to nerds like us, a bit less exciting, than
mm,
games. So there's a lot of really, really, particularly on the kind of development and programming sides, people have got mortgages, they've got families, they need to look
okay.
after that kind of first. So we've had some really, really great talent start to leave the industry, and I think people always say, "Oh, I'll come back," but I think you get used to earning a bit more money and maybe and that
Yeah.
and maybe joining another industry and you get embedded in that. So things can change over time. And then in terms of attracting talent, and and it's so sad the layoffs and the number of people that have been affected. I spoke to a studio last week who posted a lead animator role, and within 12 hours they had 800 applicants. And this is, every one of those applicants is a human being that, ideally you want to have an interaction with, and even if it's a no, speak to and so on. But there's only so much time in the day. And also there's some good people in there that are really well suited, but you have to go through hundreds of people of, oh, that art style is not quite right, or oh, the role's in Berlin, but they're in Japan and they're not quite right, and so on.
Yeah.
So the amount of, there's always that signal versus noise debate, and right now there's been such kind of deep layoffs that have really affected the industry. So many people are looking that it's almost swamped every application process, and it's giving
Mm.
internal teams kind of clogging up their processes to try and find new people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And could you share a story, maybe a memorable story, where you help a studio or a candidate achieve a breakthrough placement or solve a very tough hiring challenge or process?
Yeah, yeah. I was trying to rack my brains for this, for the kind of best example to give you before we jumped on this call, and um it was just it's one of my favorite examples. I don't know if it's the best story or something like that, but
Yeah.
it's something that I always look back really fondly on. And I don't think he would mind, but I won't name his name just in case. But I spoke to a candidate in San Francisco, and him and his partner had always dreamed of exploring Europe. And he basically
Mhm.
came to me one day, and he was a VFX artist, and he actually made Lara Croft's hair for Tomb Raider. So
Okay.
again, as someone to speak to, I was like, wow, like, you're an incredible, individual that's kind of, semi-famous within gaming. And he was like, look, Joe, I'd love you to find me a job at a studio in Europe. And, we'll talk through the parameters. And I'd love to move there, for 5 years or so, which I think in games is actually quite a long time to commit
Yeah.
to a studio. And wherever you find me a role in Europe, it means that every other weekend or third or fourth weekend, me and my partner can get on a plane and go on a long weekend. As an American who's only ever grown up in California, I can do a weekend trip to Paris, and then a weekend trip
Mm,
to Rome, and then a weekend trip to London, and then a weekend trip to
right.
Greece. It really expanded my world view of how lucky I am to grow up in Europe and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was just a really good experience because we kind of really honed down on exactly what he was looking for. He was the kind of candidate that every studio wanted. So I didn't want to just send him 20 studios and get 20 interviews and stuff like that. We really nailed down 3 studios he loved, and we organized, it was kind of crazy. He flew over from California to Studio A, then Studio B, then Studio C, all in one week. All 3 offered him. And then we talked about the pros and cons because each she lives in a different country and a different
Yeah.
taxes and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. And it was just a really fun experience where we met up for lunch. And I actually went on a holiday to America and met him for an ice cream before he moved over. So it's really nice. It was kind of the opposite of transactional. We kind of became friends over the whole process.
And he is now in Europe.
So actually, that was more than 5 years ago. So yeah, he moved to Dublin. I
Yeah.
was in Dublin for years and years and years, and then COVID happened. He's moved back to the States, but he got to do all those mini adventures all around Europe, which was awesome.
So everybody's happy at the end.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what qualities or approaches help candidates to stand out in today's competitive games job market? What should we have to get that amazing offers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, it's so tough at the moment, and I want to preface that by saying, like, 'cause I think it's important to acknowledge that I referenced it briefly earlier, but the searching for a job has changed. So, when I started 10 years ago, um, if you applied direct for a job, you'd post a job and you may get 30, 40, 50 applicants, let's just say, and you'd sift through them and go, they're not quite right for this, they're not quite right, for this, but ultimately the best person would get the job, eventually the best suited person, because you've only got 40 or 50 to look through, and that's that. Now, and with that example I gave earlier of 800 in 12
Yeah.
hours, that means it's 2000 by the end of the week or so. The best person might not get the job because
Yeah.
they might go through the first 100 and so on, which I really hate that idea. Do you know what I mean? It feels a bit wrong. It doesn't feel quite right. So the main thing is discoverability. So there's all the things which have always been true. I recruit artists mainly. So do you have an ArtStation or a Vimeo page or a Behance page? And is your ArtStation full of the latest projects? And on your ArtStation, have you listed exactly what you've done if it's a group project? So there's all those things that have been around for probably 20 years now. My main thing is people, I think, naturally don't like to do it because they think they're being pushy or so on, and I totally get that. But if you apply, let's just say you do apply for an art role at ABC Studios Limited, I really recommend go on LinkedIn and find the art director and message, hi, Mr. or Mrs. Art Director, my name's John, I just applied for this role. I'd love to work for your studio because I love games A and B. Here's my portfolio. Any questions, let me know. And
Yeah.
also find the recruiter, and also find some other, maybe the lead artists and so on. And it just elevates you that bit higher. It proves that you've done a bit of background research and so on. And it ultimately just means that you might not slip through the cracks otherwise. And then, LinkedIn is there for that, right? LinkedIn, I think as a platform in the last couple of years has become more social. I think it's it's your opinion, whatever you might have bad opinions of that, it's up to you, but more and more people are on LinkedIn, and I think the barrier to entry on LinkedIn is ultimately, if you're on LinkedIn, you're kind of happy to receive messages from people, if that makes sense, and have a communication. So find people that are hiring for that role and just kind of plant your flag in the ground and go, hey, I'm here, please look
Yeah.
at my work.
Exactly. Yeah, because I also had experience to hiring myself, and I always, when I got these small messages on LinkedIn saying, hi, by the way, I just applied to this role. Here is my resume, just copy pasting it here so you will mention it. And I always felt like I'm responsible for a reply to this person because he wrote me personally. And that's good because I for sure will take a look at his resume. I will answer him at least, hey, thank you, nice to meet you. We'll answer you in a week, let's say, because the number of applicants is a big one. So give me some time. But I always felt responsible to reply them. And if they just sending it like on LinkedIn, answering, apply, you don't feel that you need to reply them personally, right? Because they for sure will have the automatic reply or something else. So that's for sure a really nice way to get mentioned and recognized. Yeah. Yeah.
And just one more thing on that as well is, and I might mention it a bit later on, but it's not always who you meet, but it's who you meet and who they know. And it's almost like a safety net. It's one more human connection.
Yeah.
And you approach the art director of that studio, and they might go, you know what, we're making a cartoony game and you're realistic. So look, I'll tell you now, you're not right. But I've got a friend that's an art director at another studio who needs a cartoony person,
Exactly.
and so
Yeah.
so it's I completely agree with everything that you've said in terms of that extra connection. It starts a dialogue, and that's in 2025, hunting for a gaming job, if you can start a dialogue, you've got some traction to kind of
That's
move on
already
and go
good.
somewhere else. Yeah.
And that's already a good point. Yeah, that's true. And I also mentioned like it's my 7th year in this industry. And I also mentioned that our industry not that big that it seems like, right? After these years, I feel like probably I could find any person from any studio that I need. Maybe I don't know them, but maybe Joe will know, or Josh will know, or maybe Alex worked there, so he knew some colleagues who are still there. And with these human connections, you can probably find any touches in any Asia, in United States, in Europe, because everyone work remotely or hybrid mode, or someone is moving. So that's always great just to be connected on on LinkedIn and just to talk people from time to time, because you never know where they will work tomorrow, right? I
Absolutely.
always say this.
No, but it's a really good point. Absolutely. And it's such a shifting
Yeah.
landscape. It's 100%. So yeah, just having those human connections to lean on is so valuable, which when you apply through a portal or website, you don't get at all.
Yeah, that's true. And what's your philosophy in building this lasting relationship, both with your clients, let's say studios, and with the candidates in a gaming industry?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it a bit already there actually, but
Yeah.
yeah, just not being transactional at all. It's again there was a lot of recruiters, a lot of people in gaming full stop in those boom years of 2020, 21,
Mm.
22, where there was so much business going, whatever you were, if you were a recruiter or a co-dev partner or a publisher or something like that, there was so much to go around. People just did transactional business a lot, and I'm an eternal optimist, right? I always try and see the best things in things, right? And these last 2 3 years have been really really hard, but one of the benefits is I think the industry, which is a really small industry anyway, as you say, has become a lot more tight knit, and there's
Yeah.
this real sense of looking out for one another, which is lovely. It was
Mm.
just the developed gaming conference in Brighton, and
Yeah.
there's in the last 3 weeks, there's been two big companies who have announced thousands of layoffs, and there were plenty of people at that conference who their company had bought them tickets to be there, and then they'd been laid off, and they turned
Oh,
up,
wow.
and which is super super tough, right? Maybe as an individual, as a person, and the amount of outpouring of support I saw was just lovely. So I think the philosophy is, yeah, again, it's not who you for me, it's meet everyone. Any conference, I'm always like, let's get a coffee, let's get a smoothie, let's get a beer, because it's nice to meet people, full stop. And I think you can learn something from everyone. Anyone you
Yeah.
meet can teach you something if you're open-minded to
Oh,
listen to
that's true.
them, right? So there's that, and then yeah, it might not be who you meet, but they might have a friend, and they can help or something like that. And then yeah, it's a point that you made, Melania, which is an excellent point, is they may be in job A now, but they might be in job B in future. And
Yeah.
it's something that it's one of the things I love the most actually in my job is, again, I recruit artists, and sometimes I work with an art director, let's just say, to get him a job, him or her a job anywhere in the world. And let's just say, we're working for 3 months together, and I've moved his partner and his family and so on. And then he joins that company, and then he goes, I'm now hiring a bunch of artists. And then
Ah,
he or she,
yeah.
yeah, he or she then becomes my client and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it just really proves that those long lasting relationships always
Mm.
pay off. So yeah, you can learn something for everyone, as many people as you can. And I mean, it sounds obvious, right? But be nice to everyone, because
Yeah.
they may be in whatever position now, but you don't know what's going to happen in a year's time or so. And actually, on that note, you don't know where you're going to be as well, right? Like there's plenty of people that you feel I don't need this service provider now or something like that,
Yeah.
and then 6 months down the line they go, oh, I really do need that. So yeah.
That's 90% of the deals, how they close, because probably you don't need it now, but then they remember you, that they had a beer or coffee with you, and you tell them that you have this service, or you know someone who have this service and they need it. So yeah, it's a very usual situation for me as a part of the growth business development part of this gaming industry. So yeah, that's when I agree. And so you mentioned several times that you're working with art directors, art people, but what do you think? Which roles or skills do you predict that will be the most in demand over the next few years?
Yeah, it's a really good question. This might sound cliche. I'm going to say the word AI because I feel like, I have to at this point, right? And it's crazy. AI has only been around for 2 years, and it feels like, and actually, having said that, I feel like I've only really used AI for 6 months, but every month I've used it more and more and more,
Yeah.
right? And, I've probably used it more in the last month than I have the last 6 months combined, if that makes sense, right? Because it's becoming more and more part of my daily life. So yeah, I'm kind of cheating a bit here. I don't know exactly what form that's going to take, but I think my worry in terms of, to answer the question the other way around of what roles might go, is my worry is kind of more junior members of staff,
Mm, yeah.
the kind of lifeblood of this industry of kind of training juniors and becoming mids and seniors and so on. I really worry that I think it's inevitable junior roles are going to diminish, and we're going to have this kind of old guard, that maybe is an unfair way of putting it, but people that are already seniors just
Yeah.
becoming seniors and leads and so, but no new people being fed in. I think my thing, less on maybe the skills, because I think that's almost hard to predict, but my hot take, or my 2 cents on the future of the industry, is more contracting work.
Mm.
For better or for worse, maybe reflecting more of what the VFX industry is like, where games, I love games to bits, and it's one of the reasons why I love it is it's got this really high proportion of permanent staff members. You join a Ubisoft, or you join an EA, and you're an employee of that industry, or that company, sorry. Whereas in like the VFX world, you work at Framestore for 6 months on Avengers Doomsday, and then when Doomsday is done, you then move on to another project, and more kind of traditional older IT
Hmm.
industries have a lot more of these fixed term kind of
Yeah.
contracts. So I think, and we've started to see, as a recruitment company, we've seen it a little bit more with these companies offering, a 12 or an 18-month fixed
Mm.
term contract, which actually is, we're having this discussion internally. It weirdly feels more, right now, it feels more secure than a permanent job, because a permanent
Really?
job, you could be let go at any time, theoretically.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get an 18-month contract, there's that kind of confidence that someone's mapped out 18 months worth of
Mm.
work for obviously barring external factors that can come in and change things. So yeah, I think there's going to be a rise of project-based contracting, and people are going to be less, I've worked at this company for 10 years. There'll be that core
Yeah.
group, and then people kind of being shipped in to ship a project out.
That's interesting. But then everyone should look at their contracts so they can't terminate it before the 18 months.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then it sounds really like currently it sounds good, right? Because with the layoffs and sudden, this kind of news, you can't feel secure, unfortunately, nowadays. Yeah. And moving on from this negative news and negative topic, what keeps you motivated? What motivates you to keep innovating and pushing boundaries in games recruitment?
Yeah, it's like, I've probably said it 2 or 3 times now, but like genuinely, I love games. Like I love, going to Gamescom every year, for instance.
Yeah.
There's that bit on the Wednesday morning as a trade visitor where there's the big halls that aren't open yet, and I'm 9 years old again, right? I'm running around, and there's the huge like PUBG plane you can get inside, and there's like that last year there was, I think, Crusader Kings was there, and there was a whole medieval
Yeah.
village that was set up and things like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, I just can't stress enough how much, like, when we went right back to question one of my background, I could technically be recruiting lawyers all day, and I've got nothing against lawyers, but I get to, instead
Not
of
that
looking at,
fun.
it's instead of going, what legal accreditation do you have, I get to look at someone's art portfolio and go, oh
Mm.
man, I'm playing Alan Wake 2 right now, and you worked on the VFX for the Torch in Alan Wake 2. That's awesome,
Yeah.
and have that immediate rapport and bonding with someone and things like that. So I think games are going through a really tough time, and it will change, and it will grow again and improve. But it's just an industry that I really love, and I always think this sounds a bit cheesy potentially, but I do like helping people. Right? It's
Mm.
nice, to be that bridge and connect people. And if a
Mm.
client is in a bit of a pickle because they're really stressed because they're getting all these applicants that aren't quite right, and the project's been delayed, and there's someone else out there that doesn't have a job right now and is being stressed by having no income, and if I can kind of solve two problems at once by
Yeah.
bringing them together, it's genuinely a lovely feeling. And it's I get, fortunately, to travel a lot for work, and I can meet some of these people face to face, and that's lovely as well. So yeah, connecting people, and then just ultimately being a nerd and loving games keeps you.
And if you could change one thing about the industry's hiring practices or culture or processes, what would it be?
Yeah, that's true. When I was thinking about this question, I was like, okay, I wrote like 10 things down, and I was like, no, I can't be on Melanya's podcast for like 10 hours, right? So I had to
Okay,
go
three
through.
main points, let's say.
Yeah, I had to kind of get off my soapbox and go, okay, we'll leave that. No, I touched on it briefly earlier a bit, but it's the junior aspect.
Mhm.
And again, it's going to be worse with AI, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I've always had a bugbear about the lack of junior and graduate roles within gaming.
Mm.
And it's something like in almost every other industry, like if you train to become an architect, for instance, you do your architectural degree and then you join a grad scheme. You join a company in London or Paris or
Yeah.
Amsterdam or something like that, where you get, that 2 year kind of paid
Hmm.
internship type
Yeah.
situation, hopefully get a job at the end of it and so on. And in games, all over the world, but particularly there's these amazing universities in the UK and Europe and so on, where we're kind of producing tens of thousands of really talented grads and
Each
there's
year.
nowhere for them to go. And it's kind of heartbreaking, right? As well on an emotional level of like, they've put 3 years of their lives into this. That's the kind of aspiration. And it always just seems nuts to me because I know it's not, easy. Like a studio would need the time to have a training program and so on. But I always just think it's a win-win. Like if you gave that person their first shot in the industry, they might, move on in 2 or 3 years' time. But the amount of goodwill, your studio would get, and there'll be some people that would stay with you for their entire careers for sure, right? But there's always a running joke that, we have historically had sometimes like roles that require 4 years experience
Hmm.
open for 4 years. And it's like, and it's like if you hired a junior 4 years ago, you'd have someone that you could have molded, for
Yeah.
your company perfectly. So, yeah, it's going to get even tougher, which is kind of heartbreaking for me. But I wish more studios, particularly the bigger ones, because they probably have the capacity,
Yeah.
had, yearly intakes of students to help kind of kick the ladder down and also just make sure there's that. This sounds really, kind of cold now, but it's a good way to put it. Kind of conveyor belt of talent, right? Because if we're not feeding the start of the pipeline in
Yeah.
20 years' time, like there's going to be no mids and seniors kind of being
Yeah.
produced. So yeah.
That's true. That's true. From where we will have the senior guys if they're not, if they haven't been junior at one point. That's exactly, yeah, the point that I'm always thinking. Okay, you want to cut the junior roles and AI. It sounds nice. It sounds good. It's saving your resources, but from where we will get the senior guys then? Like,
Yeah.
okay. Right. So let's move on to some fun questions. So what's your favorite game? You love games. You mentioned it several times. So tell us, what's your favorite game of all
Yeah.
time?
This is the hardest question you've asked me all afternoon because I'm gonna go for Mass Effect 2.
Mhm.
Because love an RPG, I love Star Wars and Star Trek, and it's basically that. And it's amazing story, amazing gameplay, amazing music. But it was, like ask me again tomorrow, I'll have a different answer. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I'm gonna go Mass Effect 2.
All right. What's your guilty pleasure outside of work?
Yeah, I love a police documentary. Like a crime
Yeah,
drama.
that's your law history is talking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like my other life feeding in, for a second. But yeah, if when you like have the TV on and you walk past and you realize you've been watching it for half an hour, that's me with any kind of crime
Yeah.
drama.
I just recently watched a series on Netflix which called Mindhunter.
I love. Yep.
That's not a new like story. It's not a new seasons, but love it.
Yeah.
I love this kind of movies. Also, it's also about the crime stories, FBI, and how they solve it, and so on and so forth. And these interviews with serial killers
Yeah,
that
I read there's a
relaxes
book.
me.
Right? No, yeah, I read the book last year because I don't know if you finished. Have
Oh
you finished the
wow!
show?
Yeah, I watched
Okay.
the first and the second
Yeah.
season, and unfortunately, just yesterday, I realized that they will not have the third
Yeah.
season.
I was about to break you the bad news. So I'm glad that you already know.
Yeah, so I was like, why? It was so nice, but apparently not that many viewers they had on Netflix, so they can't fund the new season. So
Yeah, no, I watched it. I think I watched season one, loved it. Season two came out, I was watching it, week to week, loving it. Got to the end, and I was like, season three soon, and then it was like,
yeah,
oh, guys, where is it?
nah. For sure we'll find something else. There are a
Yeah,
lot of them on Netflix, for example.
yeah,
Right. So what's one surprising fact about yourself that most people don't know?
yeah. I love ice skating. So
Ice
yeah,
skating.
it's a
Interesting.
weird niche kind of hobby of mine that I love. It's kind of my birthday's in January, so every January there's an ice rink in Brighton, and I drag
Yeah.
all my friends to it because it's like it's the one physical thing that I'm quite good at. So I'm like, it's my birthday, we're gonna go ice skating. So yeah.
Interesting. I also like ice skating, and my birthday is in January.
And maybe that helps, right? Because there's nothing else, at least in the UK, there's nothing else to do. So it's like we're gonna go ice skating.
Yeah, hockey or ice skating. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's true. Right. So, what's your favorite travel destination?
Yeah, so super, super lucky. We used to have a office in the Philippines, so and a
Wow.
few clients there as well. So once got to travel for work to the Philippines, which was absolutely amazing, and really nice. My boss was like, "Let's book your flight a week later, so so you
Wow.
can have a week to." So, yeah, the jet lag was pretty bad as well, so I kind of
Yeah,
needed a few days either side.
that's true.
But I love scuba diving. It's kind of one of my biggest passions. So I got to like scuba dive with whale sharks and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think I super lucky get to travel a lot for work, but I think
Yeah.
I'll never beat the Philippines. It was just incredible.
Wow. And what's your favorite event or conference then?
Yeah, it's got to be Gamescom. It's got to be Gamescom. It's like
I
for
thought you would say Brighton to support local events.
Yeah, no, it's but I do, probably should say develop Brighton, and I
Yeah.
love it. I love it so much, and it's and again, just super. It's kind of a fluke. Like I was born in Brighton, right? But I just happened to be born in Brighton, Skillsearch are in Brighton, and the UK's biggest games conference are in Brighton, which is a lovely, lovely mix. But no, nothing beats. Again, it's those
Hmm.
huge halls with all those installations, and queuing up to play games. You play games like a month early. It's nothing crazy, but it feels you get to tell your mates back home. It's like, I played the latest this game before you, stuff like that.
Yes,
But just the
exactly.
sheer, like, GDC is kind of, is cool as well, and so on. And I've actually never been to TGS in Tokyo, so I'd love to go there. But I think something about 500,000 people go to Gamescom, right? The scale is incredible, and
Yeah.
just I love seeing all the cosplay as well and stuff like that. So yeah, it's got to be Gamescom.
And what's the next big conference where we can see you? But I think the answer is the Gamescom.
It's Gamescom, yeah. It's excellent timing. Yeah, obviously, if
Exactly.
you asked me that a week ago, it would be developed. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think there are many conferences in general on the calendar between now and then. But yeah, it's going to be Gamescom.
Yeah. And what's after the Gamescom in
What's after?
advance?
So it might be Tokyo because that's in September.
Yeah.
Looking at that, and then potentially one of the Nordic ones. There's another Nordic Games, maybe
PGC
October.
Helsinki.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
So
Be-
I've been to Helsinki for work to visit studios, but I've never been for the conference.
Oh,
So
I love PGC Helsinki. It's not that big as PGC London, for
okay,
example,
yeah,
but the studios, the quality, the quantity is amazing, and you can do your business and not be in a rush running like in a Gamescom
yeah,
between 11 pavilions. But yeah, and a lot of great studios are in Helsinki, in Finland, in Sweden, in just that region of the Europe,
yeah.
and usually they always come or they have side events. So I would recommend. I love PGC Helsinki. And it's not that bad regarding the weather in October, right? Because Helsinki in January or in December, like for us, it's not that bad, right? UK weather, Lithuanian weather is
Yeah.
kind of almost the same, but still, October is still very good.
Yeah, no, because I've only been to Helsinki once for work and it was in January.
Oh,
And I remember I visited Remedy, one of our biggest clients
yeah,
and one of my favorite clients. And I think I went into the office at 12 noon and I left at 2 p.m. and it was pitch black. And it
yeah,
was like, okay, the day's gone.
yeah,
Fair enough.
that's true.
And and it's amazing, amazing country, and everyone just went like, "You've come at the worst time of year." So
Yeah.
it needs to be, I went there for 2 days, and I saw the sun like once, so I need to go back for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And the last question from me, imagine that you can have a coffee tomorrow with any person from the industry, like service providers, game developers, publishers, just a person from past, present. So who would it be and what do you want to ask them?
Yeah, so actually, it would be Sam Lake from Remedy, right? So the creative director of Remedy, and it's crushing for me to say this, Melanya, because he was the keynote speaker at Develop Brighton, and I saw like 5 people on my LinkedIn, because so Sam Lake, right, creative director of Remedy, writes and directs all the games, but he's also the face of Max Payne as well, right? So I saw about 5 people on my LinkedIn posing like, yeah, I just met Max Payne and stuff like that, and I was there like, you know, like Liam Neeson in Taken or something. I'm like, where is he? You know, you don't need to track him down and find him, and I never got the chance to find him, and it hurt because he, you know, he felt so close. You know, it was like he's literally in the expo hall somewhere.
And it's not a Gamescom, right?
Yeah.
It's the conference where you can expect to meet everyone you want to meet.
Yeah. So, you know, like, you know, I don't want to sound like, you know, it was my life's goal or anything, but, you know, between me, if I had 20 minutes between meetings, I'd do a quick lap of the expo, you know, see if Sam's around. But it wasn't to be. But no, genuinely, the kind of games I play, you know, I referenced it when I said Mass Effect 2, my favorite game. I'm a bit of a loner gamer, right? So I love a narrative-driven story game. They're my favorite titles, and like, yeah, like reading a book or something like that, right? And Wake and Control and Remedy's games, the way they blend like live action footage with the games and so on. So it's not a question per se, but I'd love to just sit them down, because some of the choices they make, like no one makes games quite like Remedy. Like there's games they make, they feel like, oh, I don't know, it's the whole team obviously, but it's almost one person's vision, because there's not that many auteurs in games. You know, like in film you have Spielberg and James Cameron and Chris Nolan and so on, and we don't really have that many in games, and I really feel like he is someone. So I'd love to just sit down and be like, talk me through how you wrote Alan Wake 2, you know, how did it all work? So I thought I was going to get that chance last week. It wasn't to be, but I keep mentioning Helsinki and Finland. That's where they are, so I'll have to go back again.
That's true. That's true. That's maybe a sign that you for sure need to be in a PGC Helsinki this year.
Yeah.
Amazing. So now we have plans, Gamescom, then PGC Helsinki. We will post more and spread the word about giving a chance to more young, junior, cool guys to grow our industry and to make it positive, with more positive news that we have right now. And yeah, so that was amazing chat. Thank you so much. You shared a lot of insights about the recruitment processes, about your challenges, and some advice also. You're the first guest from the recruitment parts of the industry, and I'm really glad that we had this chat today, and I would love to share it with everyone, and I hope that it will inspire someone, or you will just have a lot of great talent coming to you, and you will have very nice offers for them, and in the end the students and the people will be happy, and everyone will go to different conferences and just be more positive a little bit each day.
Yeah. Melania, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was a great chat. And again, I think you're a really positive person as well, which is, you know, in the last couple of years, we can't let all these layoffs, you know, take us down and give up and stuff like that. So no, thank you so much for your time and your positivity as well. And yeah, it was a great chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much one more time.
No worries. Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of GameBiz Heroes. If you found this conversation valuable, make sure to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and spread the word with your network. And stay tuned for more behind-the-scenes stories, expert advice, and actionable tips from the brightest leaders in games industry. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on GameBiz Heroes.